Hello, everyone. So, yeah, more remake stuff. I know there were some leaks. I didn't really pay too much attention to those, but PlayStation and Naughty Dog put out like a 10.5 minute video about more just about like what it really is and what it's gonna have. So I figured I'd go over it. I don't know how long this video is gonna be, but we're gonna go over it and see if I can point out stuff that maybe you didn't notice or just talk about some things. So yeah, let's get started with that. We're gonna go full screen, and I'll just be up here in the corner. Let's just, I'll pause and mention something. We're not gonna watch it and then go back. We'll just react to it here.
I'm coming!
More than 2 years ago, when we were finishing Last of Us Part 2, and we were working on those flashbacks within that scene for the first game, we got excited with the idea of like, oh man, what if we made The Last of Us Part 1 to look as good, if not better, than what we have done with Last of Us Part 2, which we really pushed the boundaries of like what we could do from gameplay and a graphical standpoint, and felt like if we do that, we could actually come even closer to our original vision of what the first game would have been.
You know, you sometimes forget that The Last of Us is a PlayStation 3 game. I know it was remastered, but still, it's a PlayStation 3 game. Which kind of, as newer games come out, you kind of have a greater appreciation for the original because of just like the new grounds it broke for like what this medium could do.
Had we not been constrained by technology.
The original creative vision of The Last of Us, I think in a lot of ways was larger than what the PlayStation 3 was capable of.
The tech of the PS5, it's like an open...
Like, this stuff does look cool, I'm not gonna lie, you know, because I know there's a lot going out there. Like, this is the last game that deserves a remake. I'm like on both sides of the scale, you know, because I play The Last of Us Remastered every day, almost every day for like 8 years. So I get it, you know. I still think it looks good. It can rival some native PS4 games, I think. But damn, if this doesn't look good, you know?
box of tools and goodies that we can play from and draw from. The 4K,
That's
HDR, improved haptics, 60 frames, help 4K.
Right there, I'm going to point out. So in Left Behind, or not just... In Left Behind and Last of Us, when you throw a bottle, you're flat-footed, you know? And in Part 2, they introduce, you know, when you throw something, you're sprinting while you throw it. And even in Left Behind especially, Ellie takes like a really long time to throw it compared to Joel. But it looks like right here, I'll mute this, looks like right here, you have that moving while throwing. Right there. And it also looks like the animations are going to be the same as well. You know, Ellie does this stab here, and then like 3 more stabs. So she's going to have her, you know, Winter in Last of Us and Left Behind animations, but they're combining it with what looks like, you know, the throwing while on the move and the running animations of Part 2.
HDR, improved haptics, 60 frames, help us to reimagine The Last of Us. One
thing I like about that is the visibility goes down because of all the mist it's going to play. In the factions map for the dam, you know, mist would come in and visibility would be almost 0, which I really don't like, but you can really see the comparison here. It's not just a little rainy and, you know, here, there's no visibility blockage here. But here, I kind of like it. Like, you can see the trees in the background. They're really hazy, so I kind of like that.
It gave us opportunities to rebuild our characters at the highest fidelity. Not only are the characters more detailed, I mean down to the irises and the pupil depth. You know, you fall into the eyes of the characters. Aside from that, the facial animation is just way more believable. Like all the nuances, all the little subtle reactions, glances, glares, right? Like you get all of it almost closer to sort of...
Nothing really to add here. It's pretty much exactly what he's saying, you know? Overall, it's going to look better.
The original performances.
So no matter what, you stick to me like glue. Like glue. Like glue. Got it. Good.
See, that one's interesting because, you know, the original Last of Us was made, they didn't capture the faces, you know? Like there's no dots anywhere on their faces, maybe on their forehead, but it's still attached to the mocap suit. When they made Last of Us 2, and with the original, you know, all the facial stuff was done with computers. But with Last of Us 2, it looks like, you know, they actually captured like all of the wrinkles in the faces and everything. I guess that's what there's some trick that they did to get the original performances, but just, you know, also get like the emotions captured like they did with Part 2. So it's interesting. I think their faces are all going to pop a little more.
Good.
We are able now to not only just have the highest fidelity characters in the cutscene, but also in gameplay. It's the same character, so now we can do these seamless transitions in and out.
That right there is not as big a deal. I have this feeling that developers for games are making a bigger deal out of that than like what the gamers think about it. Like all we do is go, oh, that's kind of cool. And with devs, it's like a huge deal. And what I mean is like with the original Last of Us, you know, in the transition of a scene like this, like right there would be a black screen. And then it would start right about here. Actually, it would start right there. I always never thought of this as a huge deal, but I guess, you know, it makes a difference in a game like God of War or something, where you don't even realize that it's all one continuous take the entire game. And I don't think this game can do that because there are some passages of time. But it's still, you know, this was something I always considered they would do. I wouldn't think that they would keep the quick black screen there and then transition to the cutscene. It's all going to be seamless, but not in a seamless way like God of War. It's basically just not going to show the black screen.
So now we can do these seamless transitions in and out. Every part of the game has benefited from seamless transitions and emotional scripting.
Pretty good, huh?
Our stories happen in gameplay, on a stick.
She knew my mom.
All this stuff is designed to keep you constantly in this world.
Riley, come here. Now you got this, go.
One of the things that the PlayStation 5 is really enabling is that we're able to have a density of physics objects in a scene that really
Okay, need to point this out because this is one of the first thing I noticed. It looks like
enable.
nail bombs are back. It's supposed to be right there. I don't see it, but judging by the explosion when they get close,
Is that
it looks like nail bombs are back. Because there's no way, for the sake of this video, Joel had time to place a bomb there, like at his feet, and then run back and then run forward. And I don't think he, like, threw something that would detonate after a couple seconds. He threw it, and then they walked forward, and it detonated. So it looks like nail bombs are back, and it makes sense that they are because they're not really changing any of the the original performances in the game. If you know, you can just tell from the sound of it, really. And I think they said that that's what they're doing. Because Bill in Billstown, you know, he has that whole thing. You can't skip that scene. It's like, this is a nail bomb. You know, you got to be careful. This thing blows. It shreds anybody standing nearby. So it's like they have to have nail bombs in this game. Because that was something that I was a little disappointed with part two. They took the effectiveness of the nail bomb and they kind of like split them in half for each character. In Ellie's portion, you had the trap mine, which was basically a nail bomb that you couldn't throw. You could only place it. And then with Abby's portion, you know, it was basically a nail bomb, but you could only throw it, and it had to detonate after a couple seconds. So they took the effectiveness of the Part 1 nail bomb, split it in half, and gave it to each character. So I would like in this remake if they kept the nail bomb the way it was, because you know, it defies video game logic that you would throw it and then it would only detonate when they got near it. But I gotta say, it made for more fun. Made for more fun. I found myself not using the trap mine that much because of, the inconvenience of not really... You'd have to place it and then, like, really move away from it instead of, like, being far away from it when you threw it. So, I like this. All right.
We're able to have a density of physics objects in a scene that we could.
I would also like to point out one more thing. The shotgun in Part 1 in the original Last of Us sucks major ass. Okay? It just does. God knows how many times I've been like right here and it just doesn't do anything. Part 2's shotgun was like super duper strong, like really strong. Like you didn't need to upgrade it, kind of strong. So I hope that's what we're getting in this one.
Never is that we're able to have a density of physics objects in a scene that we could never do before. Like this has always been the dream, is to have this number of bumpables, chippables, breakables, destructible objects in a scene. Just makes the world feel rich, makes it feel lived in.
Right there, I'm still interested in what the running is going to be like, because part 1 had infinite sprint. Ellie and Abby pretty much had the same kind of sprint in part 2, but it was they got tired after 6 seconds, and that got kind of annoying. It looks like that's the one thing I'm going to look at, because nobody's confirmed it or not. Will Joel have tired sprint as well? I don't know, but I guess this is kind of the first look of what it looks like.
This number of bumpables, chippables, breakables, destructible objects in a scene.
I can't tell what game it looks like.
Just makes the world feel rich, makes it feel lived in.
It looks like the first game,
Materials
honestly.
kind of have the properties that you'd expect. The turret truck.
I think that was a nail bomb as well.
Kind of
Yeah, that's a nail bomb. Look at it. I'm just kind of noticing that now. So, all right, nail bombs are confirmed to be back, which, kind of figure they would. Also, it looks like Left Behind, this scene is playing out similarly as well.
Have the properties that you'd expect. The turret truck in Pittsburgh, when it's firing at you and it's just ripping apart the concrete and sending objects flying left and right.
Seeing things break.
That looks
like there's
cool.
fear. There's a real fear that it invokes.
And it's giving us a much more dynamic range of gameplay to
Real fear.
The bloater. I'm interested how this is going to work out. Is it going to be like you're dead in one hit? Because if you're playing, no matter what difficulty you were playing on in part 1, if the bloater touched you, you were dead. That was not the case in part 2. Grounded, you were dead in one hit. But let's say you're playing on very light in part 2. The bloater could hit you. He could hit you with his bolt charge. You didn't die from it. And also, it looks like the bloater isn't like taking something from his body and like throwing it like this. He's doing the thing in part 2. He's taking it and then doing like a pitcher's windup to throw it at you. So it looks like the bloater, he also looks a little shorter. The bloaters in part 2 are very tall. He looks a little shorter here. I don't think they're going to make it like a boss fight like they did in part 2. I mean, we're getting part 1 again, so I don't know. We'll have to see, especially if there's no dodging, which it sounds like that there's going to be that. I don't know. We'll have to see how it looks out, but how it plays out. But yeah, he's doing the throw of like the stuff he throws at you with the same animations as in part 2.
That it invokes.
and it's giving us a much more dynamic range of gameplay to play with.
Surround him!
Our AI tech has just increased.
Another thing I noticed, what happens if you aim at an enemy for too long, they just kind of move to the right or left. Let me look at it again.
Surround him!
Yeah, it's more similar to part 1 than part 2. They do it, like part 2, they do it a little like dramatically. Here they do it a little bit quicker. So it looks like it's a bit more like part 1.
Our AI tech has just increased incredibly. What we were building the basis off of was The Last of Us Part 2's AI. And it has sophisticated systems for things like the fundamental knowledge model of how these NPCs perceive things like the
Okay, one thing that I will be looking
Part
for
2's
here.
AI.
In part 2, this was probably the most annoying feature in part 2. Look, if you want to watch this video without any like me stopping and going over something, just watch the video by itself, all right? I assume most of you have already seen this before, so I'm just going over it. In part 2, there was an annoying feature where if an enemy was already aiming at you and walking towards you or just staying still, if you peeked even for a millisecond, the very first pixel that was available for him to hit, he would hit you, which created, it meant you just couldn't shoot him. You'd have to flank him or something. But it just became annoying the more times that happened, So I don't know what this game is going to do with regards to that. Like right here, if Joel were to try and shoot him, he'd get shot before he could even aim the gun, As a speedrunner, that's incredibly inconvenient. Casually, I still found that kind of annoying. So yeah, one of those things we'll have to wait until the game releases before we see what happens with regards to that. And this is where I feel like the game can really like shine here, not with the lighting, but with the AI. Look, taken from someone who's played this game like for like a third of their entire life, almost. The AI in this game, both buddy and enemy, it really sucks. Okay, it isn't bad with regards to like them following a path or non-alert. Once they're alerted, this game was so broken. It really was. Okay, it was just really legitimately bad. So I feel like alerted fights, I'm interested to see what this game does. Very interesting.
And it has sophisticated systems for things like the fundamental knowledge model of how these NPCs perceive and understand what the player is much more sophisticated.
Now how the enemies are communicating with each other, how they're chasing you, how they're flanking you, how intense that fight feels. It's so much more rewarding coming out of it from the other side.
And also what I'm interested in, I wonder if they recorded some extra lines for this new AI. That's one thing I'm going to listen out for, because part two's alert AI, it was good. I don't really have many complaints about it. Sometimes they would still take cover behind the same spots. But, I was legitimately impressed with part two's AI. Especially when, like, there's, like, 3 or 4 enemies in front of you. You hear, like, Steve, flank them. I'm on it. And then they would actually flank you without realizing it. So I always found that to be cool. It was pretty smart. So I'll be interested to see if they have any extra recorded dialogue for the new enemy AI. Because I can tell, like, when they get shot, when they get kicked, when they get punched or whatever, like, the sounds they make is still the same. But for the other stuff, I'm wondering if they went back and recorded some extra stuff. We'll have to wait and see.
Get out! One of the other big AI improvements is...
Once again, that's another spot where normally the camera would completely, like right here, the camera would normally completely break and then start right here, but this is another example of a seamless transition, which again, I think is pretty cool.
Get out! One of the other big AI improvements is the buddies.
Thank God.
Technology that we developed for The Last of Us Part 2 has this very sophisticated understanding of like, okay, this is where the enemies can see their exposure. We not only have exposure, we have future exposure. So buddies can know, okay, that enemy is walking forward and they're about to round this corner. So in 3 seconds, that corner is going to be exposed. So I'd better move now to avoid this enemy seeing me.
Part 1 had a really bad problem with, the enemies couldn't see your companion. And you might not have realized this, but in Part 2, they actually did away with that feature. But the ally companions did such a good job of never just running out in the open that you probably never even noticed it. Yeah, that's, I don't know, I think you can turn that off in the accessibilities if you wanted. But yeah, enemies actually do notice your ally companion in Part 2. In Part 1, they didn't. Really, again, I think just because of hardware limitations and how bad they behaved. How many instances in first playthroughs did they just run out in the open and stuff? I hope it gets fixed. Whether or not the enemies will notice your companion in the remake, that still remains to be seen. But yeah, the fact that they are focusing on this, I think, is cool. We'll see if it actually works.
This really lets the buddies make very complex decisions and maintain that feeling of stealth much more believably.
Also,
another
the choke
big
animation
enhancement
looks
to the gameplay is that we have this technology called motion matching. Motion matching is this technology that's basically using logic that tries to match the desired movement to a bucket of hundreds of animations. A mocapped actor has gone in and run this whole hundred.
That's kind of cool right there. Listen to the guy's grunt. It's like, when he says like, whoa, that usually, no matter what, means an instant alert in Part 1. That's something I loved that Part 2 did. Instead of, in Part 1, this was it. You hear like the humming for like an almost alert, or they think they see you. As soon as they flinched, like, you were alerted. That was it. In Part 2, enemies did this like, hey, trespasser! You had that like 1 to 1.5 seconds to take care of them before like an alert was was had. And it looks like that's going to be here as well. They still have like the old part 1 noises that they make for an alert, but it looks like it's prolonged as well here.
That tries to match the desired movement to a bucket of hundreds of animations. A mocapped actor has gone in and
that obviously
run
be
this
an
whole
alert
gauntlet
in
of
the
movements
original,
to get a
but not
really
here,
full set
which I
of all
really
the different
like.
ways a person can move. And then it's basically every frame trying to find the best matching animation that fits the path of where the character is going to go. And this motion model just gives this really seamless sense of transition. The player's movement is just a lot cleaner. It's this really smooth, organic movement.
Something about someone noticed this part right here. This is coal mine, obviously. Looks really good, but you know, I think one of my proudest strategies in the entire game is coal mine because of how much time and effort like all of us put into this area. It's now legitimately easy. You know, Ellie right here says
where the character is going to go.
You hear that?
And this motion
they're on
model
the roof. And when that happens,
just
I'm
gives this
usually
really
waiting
seamless sense
right there. And when
of
he hops
transition.
down,
Player's movement
I stab him. And then while that's happening,
is just
2
a lot
enemies
cleaner.
usually come out from there, and then hold on.
Gives this really seamless sense of transition.
So yeah, when he hops down, I stab him, and then 2 enemies spawn on the
Player's
bridge.
movement is
And then as I stab
Just a
him,
lot.
there's a clicker up there that goes way over to the right and hops down while I take out one on the bridge. Basically what I'm getting at is it looks like, just from this little demo right here, that the AI might actually be the same here. Like, their spawns and what they do. It might actually be the same, which might make this not so bad, because we already have it figured out in the original. So definitely something I'm going to look out for. That you hear that? They're on the roof. Stab them, get to the bridge, shoot one, clicker hops down, stab it in the back. We'll see if we're able to do that. I don't even know if we'll be able to do that. Whatever, just something personally for me that I'm going to look out for.
cleaner. It's this really smooth, organic movement through the space.
First, we just
Right there confirms that, like, the enemy's body's breaking in half from bombs and crawling around. That's going to be in the remake, which makes sense. And then having to hit square to step on their heads. So that was in part 2, obviously not in part 1. So that'll be here, which I think is cool.
had to build that core experience. And then beyond that, we wanted to add several features that fans have been asking for. For example, we now have a Permadeath Mode. Along that, we've
That'll be
added a
fun.
brand new speedrun mode, so players can time themselves. There's a whole community of gamers that just want to see how fast they can play through this game.
Damn right, Neil. Damn right. So let's take a look at it. So right here, this is obviously from part 2, Permadeath Mode. They have, like, it looks like they have the per chapter, per act, or like whole game. They have the difficulty. It's pretty much straight from part 2, which will be cool. You know, I just got finished with a makeshift permadeath run of part 1 that wasn't too fun, but you know, it'll be cool to have. Now for this part.
Along that, we've added a brand new speedrun mode, so players can time themselves.
Whoever took the route here is doing a bad job. It looks like, let's just look over this right here. This looks like, I don't know, it looks like your best time for the area would go right here, and then the overall time is up here, and this has the chapter name, and it probably updates as time goes on. That's my guess. You know, there's no way to tell. We'll when we get our hands on it, we'll be able to see. But yeah, that's what it looks like it is on here. And just the fact it's on the screen, you have no idea just how big of a deal that is for, like, you know, accepting or rejecting submissions to speedrun.com. Because we've had many instances of cheating in the past. How does someone cheat in a speedrun? Well, they take areas, they record them individually of, like, perfect gameplay, and then they edit it together and try and pass it off as a real attempt. That's how it usually goes. So the fact that the timer is on the screen, and we're going to require it to be on the screen for submissions, you have no idea just how big of a deal that is. They probably ripped that right from the Nathan Drake collection. it looks a little more. I don't know. Like we'll have to see. Like in a full game run, I doubt it goes all the way down the screen. It probably just updates, but that'll be cool.
So there's a whole community of gamers that just want to see how fast they can play through this game.
That's right, Neil.
Beyond that, we added a bunch more of unlockables. So there's all these different outfits for Ellie and Joel that people can unlock. A model viewer mode so people can really appreciate the details. We added award-winning accessibility features.
Every single accessibility option that we offer, that's a barrier removed for someone.
Yeah, this was always the coolest thing introduced in part 2 was the accessibilities because, like, you know, as someone who is like fully capable of playing without any restrictions whatsoever, you know, you don't think about the people who aren't able to play that way. Maybe they're missing fingers, or they're missing a hand, or they're blind, or they're deaf, or they're, you know, they can't mash a button. You don't think about those. So the fact that I think like this because they couldn't just patch this stuff into the original. They couldn't. So I think this is like one of the biggest reasons I like the existence of the remake. It, you know, because that stuff really was groundbreaking for part 2. Like all of this stuff. I went through it for 45 minutes before I even started playing the first time.
As she surveys the apartment, her eyes wander to Joel. She steps past the couch. He wears the wristwatch Sarah gifted him, which now has a cracked face.
To my knowledge, this is the first PlayStation game that has audio description built into the game, built into the cinematics.
Now it's nighttime. Joel stirs in his sleep.
And that's really the way we've tried to push the frontier of accessibility on this game.
So much of the identity of The Last of Us is the world.
We revamped completely the art direction. You know, everything from these expansive vistas that not only are they beautiful, but you feel the environment.
I don't really have much to say about like the comparisons. Like obviously it looks better. Some look very similar to the point I almost can't even tell which is which, but you know, it looks better obviously.
Feel the environments in a much more visceral way. The rooftops overlooking the Capitol building, for example, like just the breath of fresh air when you go up there and you just like, you feel that sort of
There's
release
no black screen there as well.
Tension. And then, you know, to juxtapose that down in the tunnels in Wilds and you get that dank, flooded tunnel feel, that humidity, you can actually feel it. All these environments are just completely reimagined.
Now we got our engine on the PS5, those haptics, the 3D audio, the fast loading. It really creates a much more immersive, and because of that, much more emotional experience.
One of the things I absolutely love with the 3D audio in The Last of Us Part 1 is being able to hear an enemy before they sneak up on you. And trying to do a stalker fight with the 3D audio is just so much fun. You're hearing them skitter around in a different room, and you're hearing them trying to get up behind you.
So it looks like Quick Turn is back up. Quick Turn was in part 2, but I found, like when I tried to do it, Ellie or Abby would just jump backwards, which was annoying. So I didn't use that much in part 2, but it looks like it's back here. And I take it Joel just won't jump. There's certain times where like he has to jump, but I don't think there's going to be a dedicated jump button. And it looks like, and I'm happy about this, some people were like a little mixed on the Stalkers, like they preferred part 1 Stalkers or part 2 Stalkers. There were some people who didn't even know that Stalkers, like what Stalkers were in part 1 or something. Stalkers in part 1 were basically runners with a more annoying hand-to-hand combat and terrible pathfinding. Part 2, they were legitimately creepy, I thought. You know, they actually hid from you. Instead of it just seeming like broken AI, it seemed like they have a plan in part 2. So to get those Stalkers in this game, I think is very, very cool. Because I gotta tell you right there, if this was part 1, Joel would have been hit already. Like from the moment, like, you know, they're running towards you, from the moment they start their swing of their arms or a punch towards you, there is nothing you can do. There is no animation fast enough to prevent you from getting hit. In this game, in part 2, they were slower, but they were a little more tanky. But yeah, that's something I always struggled with in part 1, is just how fast the animations of them hitting you were. It looks like they're slowed down a little bit
Hearing
here.
them trying to get up behind you.
Just a little.
Having that two-part reaction of like hearing, turning, seeing, reacting, it's just really heightens that sense of just being grounded. You are in this character, you are in this world. Now, with the PlayStation 5, the amount of control that developers have over the DualSense, it's really, really cool. All the guns in the game have a variable amount of resistance on the triggers when you aim them. The way it works with the bow is that at the very beginning, when they're starting to draw the bow, there's a little bit of resistance. And then as the bow gets tauter and tauter, the amount of resistance is increasing. And then when you release the bow, you're also getting that resistance going out of the trigger. When you are aiming,
also, I'm just noticing this right now, but it looks like, you know, the runner's running animation were different in part 1 versus part 2. Part 2, I noticed they were a little, most of the time they wouldn't run directly at you, but I can just tell from watching this video.
Also getting that resistance going out of the trigger.
The runners definitely have the part 2 running animations. Definitely. Just something to notice. And if I had to guess, I'd say the bow's reticle is going to be like part 2 as well.
False alarm!
Oh.
They're friendlies. We've been dealing with raids.
Sorry about that. Looks like I got a raid from Sully. Thank you so much for the 8-viewer raid. Sorry about that. I'm recording this live on a Twitch stream. Okay.
Trigger. When you are aiming and firing the shotgun, you're going to get a haptic vibration on the shot, and then what I think is one of the ways that
also right there, I don't know where this is.
Vibration on the shot.
If I had to guess, I'd say this is one of the office buildings right before the nail bomb part of Financial District. I could be wrong though. It looks like when you, and this was in part 2 as well. You know, in part 1, pretty much any enemy you knock to the ground, there'd be this, no man, don't please don't kill me, man. Please don't kill me. No, man, please. And what the game did was it got rid of your ability to hit them for about 4 or 5 seconds. It was honestly annoying. This is with any enemy you knock to the ground. Sometimes it would glitch out. They'd stand up immediately, but because the game disabled you being able to do anything, they would just stand up and kill you. So it was annoying. In part 2, they got rid of that and only saved it for the last enemy in the game. Last enemy in an area. If it wasn't just like such a brutal kill, like a one-hit kill gun or a shotgun straight to the face, if you do something like a shotgun blast from far away or hit their legs or something, then they get on the ground and have this little speech prepared, which will probably be the same as in part 1, but looks like it's back here too for the remake.
And then what I think is one of the ways that the DualSense really advances things is you're going to get a haptic vibration on the pump of the shotgun. And what's much more sophisticated about that on the DualSense is that, in effect, has a little like speaker in it, and it's playing an audio file that comes through in the vibrations, and those two beats is what you're going to feel on the controller.
This looks like a good spot.
This also ties in to the new workbench animations. So if you're seeing Joel taking apart a gun or screwing something in or putting a new stock on a gun, that moment where he's like jamming that on, you're going to get that haptic feedback on that. We have, haptics all across the board, for all the moments you kind of expect, for clambering, jumping, landing, meleeing, getting meleeed, like all those kind of high intensity moments we have.
One thing I will notice with that animation right there, if you were put in a chokehold and then you like do the headbutt and then the elbow to the back of the head, you would have to wait a while before being able to kick, but it looks like right here.
And getting meleeed, like all those kind of...
He does that like right away. Right away. So again, just something I'm noticing. If I'm not stopping to explain something, it's just because they already explained it and I have nothing to add. But just how quickly Joel did a kick here. No. It's just something that's different. That looks kind of cool. Because again, I think otherwise he would be put in a position where he's like, no, don't kill me, man. Please don't kill me. So he just does it right away. Was that a shotgun choke? I don't know. Did I miss something?
We have, haptics all across.
Also right there.
Haptic feedback on that.
The melee, I think, is going to be the same. It's not good. I don't think there's going to be a dodge button. I don't think there's going to be punch, dodge, punch, dodge. The melee animations, I think, look the same.
We have, haptics.
Just by looking at that one right there. it's straight from part 1.
It's all across the board, for all the moments you kind of expect, for clambering, jumping, landing.
Someone mentioned, did he do a choke with a shotgun? I think he's just trying to choke.
Getting melee, like all those kind of high intensity moments we have represented in the haptics. What I personally absolutely adore is the way we can enhance the really quiet, subtle moments of gameplay. So it's like when Joel goes in to pet the giraffe.
That giraffe
getting
looks a
that
lot
little
older here.
light touch on the haptics as he's petting the giraffe.
More white.
To me, that's the essence of The Last of Us. It's the high tension moments, it's the low tension moments, it's all of it feeling grounded. You're feeling immersed in this world. It's all about bringing you along with that story in as many ways as we can. And that's what the new technology on the PlayStation 5 is allowing.
Was that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out.
There's something special about that core experience of playing as Joel and Ellie on this journey. Then to take that experience and really honor it and keep the authenticity of it, but elevate it in every way possible, whether it's pipeline, whether it's art direction, whether it's technology, everything that allows us to make that experience better. Not different, extremely better. That's why, to me, this is the definitive way to play The Last of Us.
For $70. I like this project's existence, I really do, but it's sorry. Yeah. It's I have nothing more to add. I'm still kind of on the fence about the price point. Not for me, I have no choice but to buy this. Everyone's asking so are you going to play the remake? Are you going to speedrun the remake? It's like, if I didn't answer you, what answer do you think I would give? Of course I am. Of course I am. So me, I have no choice but to purchase this. I have to. I have the Firefly edition pre-ordered. I was able to get one. Of course I'm excited for it, and I'm going to play it. But, for the average consumer, you're getting a similar, it's the game. It's just going to be a little better. Well, I don't want to downplay it. It does look impressive, and it does look like a lot of work was done into it. It's the $70 for me. I don't know. I know that's what new games are going for now, and maybe more work was done on it than we think. This 70, I don't know. I think personally it should be 50, and the reason is this. The original was 60, as new games are. Remastered 1 year and 1 month later, you had, the resolution was upgraded from 720 to 1080, the frame rate from 30 to 60, which is a big deal. If this game was never remastered, I wouldn't be able to play it the way I do. Okay, so I love the fact it was remastered. But you had, the resolution upgrade, the frame rate upgrade on the newer console, the better controller, in my opinion. You had Left Behind and Factions and all of the DLC included for free for $50. You had all of that I just mentioned for $50 instead of $60. It was $10 less than the original price and the normal price of a new game at the time for $10 less. It really, even at full price, $50 was a bargain. It was. So you're getting this remake now with Left Behind included, but no multiplayer. I don't know if I mentioned the remaster also had the multiplayer remastered completely as well. So the remaster just this. Ooh, it's dusty. Ooh. You're getting a bargain at $50, The remake just having the campaign and Left Behind for $70. I don't know. I think that's more what's rubbing people the wrong way. Look, I think it's great that it's getting a remake, for me personally, selfishly, for, all the accessibilities and it being on PC. That's another big one. It being on PC is a big deal. I have a story. My brother-in-law, my sister's husband, he is a gamer, but he doesn't own a console. He plays PC games. The last time I saw him when we were visiting, he's like, I'll finally get to play The Last of Us. And I'm like, What is it? Oh, right, it's on PC. Yeah, it's coming to PC. And so yeah, I've personally already seen like real world benefits, real life benefits of this remake being a thing and coming to PC. Because I can tell you right now, like the original being just porting it to PC, I don't think would be enough. It's too old to just be ported to PC for the first time. You know, it's got to be updated if you're gonna bring it to PC. So again, I love the fact that this remake is happening. I think it's cool. I think it's warranted with how groundbreaking the accessibilities were with Part 2. But again, it's the price point. I think it should be 50, maybe 60 even. But you know, you're making this big deal over $10. Firefly Edition, which is $100, sold out in like less than an hour. So they know what they're doing. People are still gonna buy it. I'm just saying, and of course I have to buy it. But for the average consumer, 70 does kind of feel like a bit much. It just kind of does. But that's really all I can knock it for. I don't know what else to mention. Yeah, and some other things that, you know, just some gameplay changes off the top of my head. You know, in Part 1, it didn't really matter where you shot enemies. In Part 2, if you shot their legs, they would go down, then you can run up and kill them real quick. I have a feeling that's going to be here in the remake as well, just a hunch. It looked like some of the animations were the same as well. Like, nothing animation-wise in Part 2 looks like it's going to be here in the remake. It looks like it's the original animations. Like, Joel being able to do a sprint punch right there. Ooh, that looked cool, didn't it? Joel being able to do a sprint punch, and like it doing basically the same damage as 2 flat-footed punches. I think that's going to be the same, but you know, with regards to stuff like that, we're just going to have to wait to get our hands on the game before we you know, I can make more like I can make another video about like similar things, different things compared to like the original, the remake, Part 2, all that stuff. So some things, you know, we can guess, but really we're just gonna have to wait until the game comes out to see what exactly we're getting. Yeah, hopefully they react to my hits. Someone in chat just said, yeah. It annoyed me so much in Part 2 when you had like an enemy, a runner, or an enemy with like a melee weapon, and he's like, ah, and Abby would do this giant punch, and he just, like nothing happened. It annoyed me so much because the game wants you to, It's so annoying. It's just like, dude, have you ever watched UFC? They're out. They're out, man. I loved in Part 1 just how they react to your punches. I never got used to that in Part 2. Like if a runner went for a grab and you threw a punch, they would just continue with whatever they were doing. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. So, yeah, if they react to the punches in the remake, I'll be that much happier. Yeah, I have nothing more to add. We'll wait to see. Like I just said, we'll wait to see what exactly the specifics of it when it releases. And I'll put out more videos with that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. From the time I'm uploading this, there's going to be about a month left to wait. At least we don't have to wait that long. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So, yeah, that's about it. I will see you guys next time. Bye.